Hi everyone, this is Tammy from Tammy's Stamping Creations. Welcome back for another video tutorial. Today I am going to show you how to do a Christmas card. Now I know a lot of you are thinking it's not even Thanksgiving yet, so why are we even talking about Christmas? Well, if you make all your Christmas cards, then you do need to think about it sooner than probably most. So I'm going to show you how to do this beautiful card using a technique called triple time stamping. It's an older technique and it's been around for a while, but I just absolutely love the results, and it definitely gives your card a wow factor, and people are definitely going to talk about it when they get this card from you. But stick around after the video because I'm also going to show you a couple other designs that I did using the same technique. So let's get on over and let's get stamping. So the materials I'm using for this card is just Pacific Point and Whisper White cardstock. The base is your regular size base card, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. You have some additional Whisper Whites. These will be used as your mats. These measure 4 3/8 by 3 1/8. and 3 3/8 by 2 1/8. And then your Pacific Point largest one measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. The medium size is 4 1/4 by 3, and your smallest size is 3 1/4 by 2. If you don't get the measurements, don't panic. They'll be over on my blog, tammystampingcreations.wordpress.com. and you can get all of those there, or you can always play the video back as well. So the first thing you need to do is adhere together temporarily, it's only temporarily, your mats, or I'm sorry, the cardstock that you're going to stamp on. So you want to do that, and you can use a temporary adhesive, which I have here, but you could also use your snail, and I'll just show you what I do there. You can place just a tiny bit of snail on the back and then just rub your finger over it or tap up and down to kind of pull that stickiness out of it. And that'll kind of make it temporary. And since it's just a small, it's not going to matter that much if you pull it up a little bit, because it's going to be covered up anyway. So then you want to place that in the center of your medium one, and I just eyeball this. You can measure if you really want to, but again, I just eyeball that. And then I'm going to place some temporary adhesive on that one and put it, and I can already see that I really did a poor job eyeballing that middle one. So I'm going to pull this up. Put that on and try to do this one again. So we're going to use some heat embossing. So we're going to use an embossing technique as well, which I've shown you in the past. And we're going to start with our sentiment. Before I do any embossing though, I always like to use my embossing buddy. And this is just to kind of take all the static out of it, to make sure that when you do emboss on it that nothing else sticks to it. The powder doesn't stick to anything else but what you've stamped. So it's always a good idea to use your embossing buddy. And I'm going to start with my sentiment right in the middle, because then I'll place my snowflakes around the sentiment. So again, I'm just eyeballing, placing that in the middle. Now since I don't want that, even though Versamark does take a while to dry, I don't want that to dry while I'm stamping my snowflakes. So I'm going to go ahead and put the embossing powder on my sentiment before I stamp my snowflakes. I'm not going to emboss or heat emboss it or heat set it just yet. I'm just placing my powder on. Okay. So the next one I'm going to use, we are using the Flurry of Wishes stamp set, and we're using the medium size snowflake as well as the two smaller snowflakes. And then I just used the Merry Christmas sentiment from here. And then for the inside of the card, I am going to use sending you a flurry of warm Christmas wishes sentiment as well. So now I'm going to go to my medium size snowflake. And I'm just going to stamp that up and just randomly stamp around my sentiment. And you'll notice that you may have to make or may have to press down harder than you normally do when you stamp, because you do want to try to get across all 3 layers. And because there's an elevation to each layer, it's going to take a little bit more to actually stamp on all 3 layers. So you do want to press down. And that's why I have my piercing mat underneath as well, to give it a little more cushion. I like to use that with my photopolymer stamps anyway, but this as well gives it a little more cushion to make sure that you're catching that on all 3 layers. Once that's done, you are going to see, and I don't know if you can see that, you are going to see that there is a little bit of a gap in between each layer. That's okay, because remember, we're putting a mat in between each one, so it's going to cover up that gap in between each layer. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to stamp this a couple more times around my sentiment. Now that I'm done with that stamp, I'm going to go ahead and put my embossing powder on that. Again, I'm not going to heat set it just yet. I'm going to do my smaller snowflakes first, and then we'll heat set it all at once. So again, I'm just going to come in here and kind of fill in the spaces. Okay, done with stamping of my snowflakes. Going to bring in my embossing powder one last time. I think that looks good. It looks like that I still have some embossing powder on there. So I'm just going to take a paintbrush, because I don't want that to get heat set. Okay, I think that looks good. So now I'm going to heat up my gun, my heat gun, and just let that get warm before I actually put it onto the paper. And since this does get pretty hot, I'm going to hold this with my tweezers, and hopefully you'll be able to see it actually change when it heats up. As you can see, my middle layer kind of blew off in the process, but that's okay. As long as they stay together when you're stamping, that's all that matters. So you could even heat emboss them separately if you need to. So now all we have to do is assemble our cards, so we can take our layers off and just add them to our mat. So for this, I'm just going to use my regular snail. I can move this out of the way. And since the paper did warp just a little bit, you do want to make sure that you put plenty of adhesive on the back. Add that to your mat. And you want to make sure that you keep them in the same orientation than when you take them off the card, because then, and let me zoom in here just a little bit for you. then when you put them together, you want to make sure that you line them back up so the alignment of the snowflakes is the same. So see how that circle is? You want to just make sure that your alignment is the same. And then to finish it off, I just used these fabulous accents on the bigger ones. So I just used glue dots to add these. These are so cool. I don't know if you can see those. And I'm going to put those using a glue dot. Scroll up to the center of each of the larger ones. Laying on there. And then I used the medium size rhinestones to add to the medium. And the last thing I did was I took my Pacific Point stamp pad along with that sending you a flurry of warm Christmas wishes. And stamped the middle of my card with that. And that's it. That's all there is to this card. I hope you enjoyed that, and actually, as promised, let me bring in a couple different ones that I did. So I did one with our poinsettia, the Reason for the Season stamp set. So that's a poinsettia one. And then another one that turned out really well, and I just love this, is I did a black and white one with our red foil paper. See how that shines? So embossed with white on black, and then did the red foil paper, and then for the center of the flowers I used our dazzling diamond cherry cobbler, and then inside I just decorated with a black flower with the cherry cobbler in the middle as well. So that one I did. And then just to do a little different to show you that it doesn't all have to be Christmas, I did a fall leaf card. Just grateful for you to send that out. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully you'll give it a try and realize how simple it really is. And until next time, thanks so much for joining me.